Welcome, and thanks for stopping by. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to our podcast on one of your favorite platforms, I'm glad you're here. At this time, I would like to thank our partners and sponsors for their dedication to helping the show to grow. We cannot do what we do without their help. Hey everybody, you've reached the Millennium Beat with your host Kevin James. I am so glad you stopped in. You're going to have a great time today because I have Michael Feynman on the computer with me. And we're going to discuss a little bit things that went on in his life and being a mentor, a father, a speaker, and a guide. So we're going to learn a little bit about Mike at the same time. First of all, Mike, do you like to be called Mike or Michael?
Either one is fine. I prefer Michael, but either way is great.
I slip because my brother's name is Michael, but we call him Mike. So that's why. Yeah. So if I call you Mike, I'll try to remember to call you Michael. So
I answer
Michael,
to both.
You answer both. Well, again, Michael, thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a really good show. I'm gonna learn about you. You're gonna learn about us. Hey, we're gonna learn together here. So, and everybody who's listening or watching, they'll learn about all of us at the same time. So it's pretty cool. So I appreciate it. So let's go back to your early days. Tell me a little bit about where you came from. Your history. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Sure. So I was born in Rockville, Maryland, and grew up north. And I had a pretty tough childhood, actually, and lost my mother at the age of 3. She passed away from a brain tumor. But I had a brother that was a year and a half younger than me. But the outcome and over this next several years created quite a bit of rebellion in me, quite a bit of rejection, guilt, shame, a lot of things that I dealt with that I've overcome. But I wasn't really in the home much growing up. And so at about 15, I was out of the system and I moved to Florida and had some family here, but I was pretty much on my own at 15. I had my own place. Wow. I was going to high school. I was working a couple jobs and just kind of went for it.
Right. That's interesting. At 15, you're a motivator. You decided to do something. You could have taken your cards and just did nothing, but you didn't. That's cool. So now you said your mother died at an early age. Was your father around at the time, or what's the story with him?
He was there. Yeah, my father was there, and then he remarried a couple years later, and it was just a time of not understanding as a child, not being able to receive love, not really understanding unconditional love, and being raised in a Jewish family. And then later in life, when I went on my own, I was pretty tough-skinned, as you can imagine at this point, and really didn't allow myself to feel, didn't allow love to enter in. I don't know that I knew how to receive love at that point because I'd been in boarding schools for many, many years and being raised by people that weren't family. But God showed me what that meant later on. So I'm grateful for it, although it seemed like a lot at the time. But truthfully, my story changed at some point, Kevin, where I went from woe is me to, okay, I see what we're doing here. Let me just drive and get this done. And I thought I did it on my own. People used to say, wow, you're a self-made man. You've done such a great job. And then later realized I had done very little of it and the Lord had done most of it. So
do you find that you're not in the abnormal range of people being not knowing love and understanding love? Do you find that more that people don't really know and understand what about true love is?
Yeah, unconditional, especially.
Unconditional, it's like, because we're all trained, like, if you do your chores, I'll love you. I mean, they might not say that, but they will imply it. If you're good in school, I will love you. And it's performance based is what I'm getting in my head. Performance. We are trained to be performers, trained rats,
especially men.
Yeah. And the thing about it is we also, you probably, I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but my age, born in the 60s and stuff like that, my father and stuff like that, they did not know how to show love to their kids. A hug you, love you, type of thing. It wasn't a manly thing to do. I mean, the mother was the embracer, the love, the mom, the nurturer. Yeah. Where the father was not, is like, I'm the breadwinner. I go to work, I come home, eat my dinner, and I, watch a little TV and then go to bed, and I do it all over again.
I actually studied that out, and
Did you?
I have a theory on that. And so I went back to the Great Depression. And
Okay.
before the Great Depression, most families were farmers on some
Okay.
level.
Right.
Many families were farmers. But then when the Great Depression happened, fathers had to kind of disconnect from their kids because they weren't able to feed them. They were watching their children die off from starvation or sickness, or, there was just no money to be had. And so the fathers, you see all the pictures from the Great Depression, they're out on the street waiting for work that wasn't there. They knew it wasn't there, but they stayed out of the home anyway. And my theory is they really just couldn't sit there. They had to try to do something, and they couldn't face their kids. So I think there was an emotional disconnect because they had to protect themselves, to protect their feelings and their hearts and all the things. And so they just shut it off. And so then if you look generationally as that came on, the next generation was basically the boomers. And the boomers came through, and they didn't want to have that disconnect. They wanted to love their kids, but they didn't know how. They weren't taught by their fathers how to be fathers, the men. So there was still that disconnect where, hey, I'm proud of you, son. I love you. I'm proud of you, daughter. I love you. But I'm going to be at work all the time, and I'm probably not going to connect with you much. Right. And I'm a dad, and that's what we do. And so then you look at the next generation, which were the helicopter parents, and oh my gosh, we're going to completely dote on our kids. And it's a tough cycle to look at when you really look at it. You ever heard the saying, hard men make hard times make hard men, and hard men make good times, and good times make soft men, and soft men make hard times. And it's this cycle. And if you look at it back that way, that's absolutely true. That's what we're dealing with today, where toxic masculinity is a buzzword, and they're against masculinity. All that is really, bro, is young men that weren't taught how to harness power. And so, yes, it's not toxic. It's masculinity not controlled. But we need it terribly. Terribly.
It's definitely.
I mean, if you think about how difficult it's become because we're not multi-generational in the same home, the kids don't get the benefit of learning from the grandparents if they get to see them, much at all. I don't think, this is only 50, 75 years old that we're doing this. We were multi-generational that long ago.
Yeah. Well, also, too, one thing good about the Jewish race is that's how a lot of scriptures got pointed from story after generation. They told their stories from generation to generation to generation. A lot of times today, people, I give you an example, my nephew, he knows about his father's side of the family quite well, but he has no information, really knowledge on his mother's side, which is my side, the Irish side. He could care less, they don't care. The generations that are coming up, and my nephew is 40 something, 45 maybe, I think.
Yeah.
And he has a daughter that just got married. She's like early 20s, which is my great niece. I mean, it makes you really feel old when you have your great niece getting married. And if she ever had a kid, I would be a great uncle,
Yeah.
But my point is the generation, they don't take stock into hearing what the older generation of getting knowledge from them. That's why I love what I do. And I started out with a company years ago called Eternal Memories. And I always joke about it. I had it until I kept getting phone calls for urns and caskets. Because Eternal Memories, that's what they would call.
Sure.
So I changed the name, and then I became Video Impressions. So, but the story was the fact that I like, how I started with that is taking old stuff and making it new. And people's stories of interviews with their grandfathers that came over from Russia, and archiving those things. And people, they're not interested in it. They're not. I mean, this ancestry.com thing is kind of popular, a little bit, but in general, kids today don't really care about where they came from. Like I came from, I found out my grandfather was from County Mayo in Ireland. That's all I know. And then I always thought I was half Irish and half French, but this is the ironic story. No, it's not about me today, but I used to hate Canadians. I thought they were snobs and all that kind of stuff. So all the people that in Canada, I love you now. So bear with me. I always did. I didn't like Canadians and stuff like that because I thought I was French, from France and stuff, and Ireland and stuff like that. And I realized that my Ireland side is true. But my French side came from Canada. So I'm half, or a part of me is Canadian, and I'm also
Right.
Indian.
That's
I have
funny.
Indian in me, and I don't know how much. And that's why I'm always curious about doing the ancestry, DNA test, because I'm curious to see. As I said, I'm French, Canadian, Indian, and then
Right.
I'm Irish. So I'm not really 50-50. But, I didn't know that, and I luckily did an interview with my mother before she passed in 2002. Didn't do it as professional as I do now, but I actually sat down and said, tell me about as much as she could remember about her youth
That's
and
great.
growing up and stuff like that. And we have it on CD, and I gave one to each one of
That's
the
great.
kids, so I have great nieces and nephews that never heard their grandmother, or it would be, great grandmother, because her grandmother is Nana, and that's my sister, and then my mother would be great grandmother. But my point
Yeah.
is that they today we don't, they've lost their identity, they've lost the interest in knowing where they're from, and I mean,
Right. I
it's
think
interesting.
yeah, it is. I think a lot of Americans don't have culture like the Jews, and growing up Jewish. Everything was very connected. Everything was very tight. Families were connected. Family was very important. It used to drive me crazy because I remember as a kid, they would say, "Oh, we're going to visit so and so at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're just going to visit on a Saturday." And I said, "Well, why can't we go at 9 in the morning and then have the day, or 6 in the evening?" But it was very common to sit around for 3 or 4 hours and just talk. And people now think you're crazy. They can't even fathom that.
Well, they can't sit that long. I mean, it's like
Right.
you're barely like at a church service. If you speak more than 30 minutes, you've lost the people. They had a saying that your mind can only adore as long as your rare does. It's like you get uncomfortable. But it's just, again, not just the Jewish race. I mean, years ago, back in the early 1900s and stuff like that, it was culture. You had Chinatown, you had Little Italy, you had France. You had the groups that would come together, families would come together, because again, like we talked earlier, that everybody was around the same block, everybody was close together.
Yes.
But now,
especially Italians and Jews. I used to always say, the only difference between an Italian grandmother and a Jewish grandmother, because they look the same. It's always Sunday dinner, Sunday gravy for Italians, right? They would have pasta or whatever. But the only difference was my grandmother said, eat, eat. And yours said, manja, manja. And that was it, because that's why the communities were so, right next to one another in New York and the boroughs, because they were very similar in culture and family and the importance of that. And the Latino community has that going on. There's so many different communities that do, but generally speaking, your average everyday American hasn't experienced that.
No, and unfortunately, they don't have a desire to.
Because they don't know what it is. If they knew what it was, they would desire. I mean, they're desiring connection. They're desiring identity. They're desiring these things, and the behaviors that we're seeing in young people now, which is why I created Identity University, is that of people that are craving a connection, craving their identity. I spent some time with a friend of mine, Mike Toby. He calls himself the Heaven Guy, and he has a program called theheavenguy.org. And he is a phenomenal guy. We're fishing buddies and we're friends. And this guy has poured into me. I can't tell you how much. And I really love this guy. But one of the things that he did is he did a search through a marketing agency on Google and asked, what are kids asking about themselves? Okay. And the first one that they asked is, who am I? That's the first question. The second one is, am I okay? The third one was, I can't remember, but the last one I remember was, is God real? And, if you look at today's movies and Marvel and superheroes and all these things, they are looking for Jesus. They just don't know who he is. And they don't know who their identity is. Again, we have this massive fatherless society. Over 60% of homes in some cases are, even if they're divorced and they go back and forth, the father's not present every day. And the moms can do a great job, and they have been. But dad gives identity. Dad gives the last name. He creates a legacy through his children. And if he's not there to do that and give them his approval and their identity and their last name and all these things that kids need, then they have to go try to figure it out on their own. And this is where all the confusion's coming in. This is where gender dysphoria comes from. This is where, all of these things come from, because there's a need to belong. And there's groups that segment themselves, and there's more division now, I think, than I've ever seen. And now these, when I went to high school and you went to high school, you had the jocks and the heads and the, the band and, all that.
The geeks and,
and then it went to emos and right. But it's changed now to where it's, it's much more pronounced, and they're demanding rights for what they believe, which I don't know how we got this far, but I can say that it's a need to understand identity. And I know that you mentioned you had a guest that had worked through some of that themselves. When you don't have identity, but you find a group that will love you unconditionally or accept you, when you never got the acceptance that you needed, you may go into that group not even being one of them, but needing to be accepted and becoming whatever that is. You'll do anything for that acceptance, right? And I talk about, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, I don't want to interrupt you, sorry, it keeps wording it's like gangs. Well, how come gangs become very popular? Is that they accept you for you, and then, they make you feel like family more than sometimes family does. So
and it's communication without having to do the hard work.
Yeah, and you go where you feel loved or you feel accepted. And, you do some things that you go, well, whatever, it's worth the cause, but it really isn't. But yeah, gangs are, churches, I always love it. Churches, in a sense, in the Christian world, it's like, oh, we're family. A lot of times we're a dysfunctional family. But in general, often, in general, a family is, you have your, pros and cons of families. You don't always get along. It's like they always had a saying is, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your relatives.
Right. But the churches have that catchphrase, let's do life together. And, what does that look like? And then there's a small church, home church movement that's happening now. And I'm a part of that as well, and big churches. But, this is where we do life together. This is where I have a problem and I call one of my brothers and say, man, I just need to talk. I need to work it out. And men have a hard time communicating because of that cycle that I talked about. But I think that they're starting to kind of come to now, and they're starting to understand that they can communicate. And if we don't, as men, if we don't step up and really take our role back, it's under attack.
Right. It definitely
we can't afford that to happen. And I think a lot of men also get the whole concept of spiritual leader incorrect, and they think, oh, I'm the boss. No, you're responsible. When Adam and Eve were in the garden and Eve ate the apple and gave it to Adam, he got in trouble because that was his watch, right? So what that means is you're responsible to protect your family, to raise them right, your kids, direct them and all of that. You're the one responsible. But with that being said,
okay,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. I was just thinking. Word Adam is like, it's that woman you gave me, Lord. That it's like they were right from the learn how to pass the buck. Instead of saying, Lord, and that's not on society. I've learned that if I make a mistake at work, I said, hey, I made a mistake. It was my fault. My pastor always talked about sins, even if it's not your, own it and then repent for it. And then move on. So it's like owning something. I'm not owning it and keeping it, owning it and getting rid of it. And if somebody else has a sin, just own the sin like you were interceding for them, and then repent and turn, and then go on.
Look at Job. Job was repenting for his children's behavior, right? And he had to, and obviously Job had a lot of incorrect thoughts, but that was a cool one that he was consistently praying for them because they were sinning.
So let's go a little bit more about your story, and then we're going. I'm going to see how much time we have. About 30 minutes so far. And this conversation is going really good. We've talked about identity and stuff like that. You want in your little description, your little bio stuff, you talked about being a father. What's it like being a father? Because I'm not a father and I've never been one. So what's it like being a father?
So being a father is the most amazing thing that God has ever trusted me with. And it's such a blessing. I find a lot of joy and I'm a very hands-on dad. I always have been.
Okay.
But
now
it
you
hasn't
have
been
what, boys or girls?
I have I have 2 stepdaughters and 1 stepson and 1 biological son. My steps are all grown up. They're in their late 20s and 30s with children and grown up. But I didn't do a great job with them. Honestly, the way that I was raised is how I parented, the way I was parented. And it was not a healthy behavior. I did not do a good job. I disciplined. Well, I was trying. I disciplined without love. I disciplined harsh. I did love them very much, and I gave them everything I had, and they knew that. But I also was very strict, because I was raised very strict. But it was not healthy, and I did. The consequences that my stepson is still in my life somewhat. My daughters, no, they're not in my life now. To their credit, they're on dad number 3. So it's different for them as well. And, that's been very difficult. But I take full responsibility for my actions. So I knew that I wanted to be a better father. Now, when the marriage ended, my son was 5 and I fought for 50-50. That's all I cared about. And I got 50-50 with my son at 5 years old. And we had a lot of work to do because his mother and I, did not see eye to eye. And she was consistently bashing me on the other end. I did some of that in the beginning as well until I was able to forgive. And so I'm guilty of that also. So my son became very confused. He didn't know who to believe. Loved us both. He didn't get divorced. He didn't want us to be divorced. But he and I had to work through that. And it was not easy. It was very, very difficult. In fact, I think it was more difficult because his mom was not helping at all. In fact, it was a barrier, consistently always trying to alienate. It was really hard. At this point, I've set my boundaries. He's 16 years old. We've gone through some serious life challenges together, but we are really, really close. I think if people would meet us, or if you were to meet people that know us well, the first thing out of their mouth, if you ask, well, what's Mike Feynman like? They would say, he's an awesome dad, because I pointed my life at being an awesome dad. I read books. I interviewed parents. I started programs. I really learned, though, how to be a dad from watching the relationship from God and Jesus, and that reciprocal obedience, or that obedience from Jesus to the Father. I only do what my Father says. I only do what He tells me to do. That's powerful. I want to be that kind of man. And so my son, as I'm teaching him to be that kind of man, is watching me walk that out. If I did not walk that out, they say more is caught than taught. That is never more true than with kids. They see everything.
They're watching a lot more than you think.
Yeah, and he's a mini me, right? So Kevin, you know how hard it is to deal with me when he's being ornery? It's terrible. I'm dealing with me.
He's dealing with you. I have adults that aren't even kids that, I say we're a lot alike, and they go, no, we're not. I go, yeah, I see me in you so much. Oh, no, we're not. I said, no, because you don't see you and me, but I see me and you. I've had bosses like that, and we just.
It's hard, but in the end, my son has a dream to play professional basketball. He's 16. He's got the build for it. The work ethic that this boy has, man. Cool. I wanted to instill a good work ethic in him, Kevin, but I didn't do this. God did that. Like, there's no way. This boy works out so hard, so often. He is so driven to be successful. And I made a deal with him 2 years ago. He said, I want to take basketball seriously. And we were playing soccer up until then. And I said, okay, what does that look like for you? And he said, well, I want to get on a team. So we did that. Once we were on a team, we were playing rec ball. He said, no, I want to take it really seriously. Okay. And I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. You do the work. I'll help you in the background. I'll get you where you need to go. We got him on this amazing team that we prayed our way into, an AAU team with a phenomenal coach that has coached several boys into the NBA. He's just a great guy, and he's a believer too. Cool. We prayed ourselves onto that team. I get him the right food, the right supplements. I get him to and from the gym. I get him to and from games and practices. I do a lot of driving with him, and I'll take his carpool with the boys. And I got to tell you, man, this is the best part of my life right now.
Cool. And it's something that, I mean, I think this is an analogy with spiritual things is you can understand the relationship between God and you a lot better when you're a father, because you
Yeah.
understand the heart of the father. When you're, me, I'm on the heart of a son. I mean, I know
Yeah.
what a son's like, but I don't know. I mean, I have animals, I have fur babies, but other than that,
Yeah.
it's not a child, and it's a whole different process. And you
It
understand, I
is
mean, because parents will sacrifice. I know my mother did say, here, you can have the big room. I'll take the little room. She sacrificed her stuff so I could have it, and that's what a parent
constant.
does, that they will put you first. And in normal cases, we don't put ourselves first. I mean, we always put ourselves. I mean, well, first in the sense of it's all about me. But
Right.
us as fathers and stuff like, no, it's not about me. It's about you. And that's the same thing I try
Yep.
to implement in our conversations with people I interview. It's not about me, and unfortunately, sometimes we get so caught up because we're having a great conversation, and God reminds me, He does a lot. God does. He puts pictures or not stories, but more like snapshots of something. Like he'll say something, and I go, "Oh yeah, what about that?" It's like, so I do that a lot of time, and I get excited because I want
That's
it.
great.
It's like, God is like giving me a shot of something. It's like an instant picture,
Yeah.
and He does that all the time.
Quick
I go,
view.
"Oh
Yeah.
Lord, God's doing it again." It's like, give me
I
this
love it. That's how
prophetically.
I learned. You're a creative, and so am I. And so, a picture to me tells 1,000 words. If the
Oh yeah.
God shows me a vision of something, okay, I got it. I have a saying. It's on my website, and I say this all the time when I have a speaking event: is when you know who you are, when you actually understand your true identity, you can become anyone or do anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
But the
always used to
opposite is true
use
also.
use the word. I used to use discipline. If you could teach
Yes.
someone discipline at a young age, nothing is impossible for them. I mean, if
True.
they
But
want to
who
become,
likes the word discipline?
nobody does. Well, I
Good.
give you an example. I would say, if you asked me a year ago would I would be disciplined on finances, I go,
Hmm.
no. I mean, I'm not bad. I'm not, throwing money out like it was like water.
Where did you learn that? Did you learn that through Financial Peace University or anything
Nope.
like that?
Nope. I just was
The Lord?
God told me to not to spend, not to buy anything, not to spend any money.
Jim Rohn said something, and I love the self-help world. I've been around it for years. I actually own a company with Les Brown that we built together, and he really taught me a lot about speaking and who I was as a person, what I had to offer. I really love Les Brown. He's changed my life. But Jim Rohn was another one that said something that really, really got me. And he said, if to get what you want in life, help as many people get what they want in
Mm-hmm.
life. And in turn, you'll get it. And Jesus talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
We have favor. I think the thing as Christians that a lot of us miss is, yes, do we work hard? Yes. But we have favor in a way that if we'll work in the areas that the Holy Spirit wants us to, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
stay in his will, we're not working as hard.
Right.
I have some business partners in one of my companies, and we talk about it all the time. And God is in the fish business, and I
Mm-hmm.
love to fish offshore. I'm a boating guy and spend a lot of time in the ocean. But we talk about it all the time. The fish are jumping in the boat. We're not having to throw the net. We're not even having to listen. We're just being obedient to everything we hear and moving in it. And the fish are literally jumping in the boat. And I've been in those positions before in business. And when you find that sweet spot, when you find that place of really being in his will, that's one of the indications, because you're not things that happen in they say signs and wonders will follow those that believe. Listen, signs and wonders follow me everywhere I go, but I expect it because I know who I am as a son. And it's interesting you said you know how to be a son. If you look at my speaker bio, it says son, father, speaker. And that's because I first am a son, which taught me how to be a father. And I think that's so key. Also in business, when you're working with people, when you're serving others. And again, Gary Cassie, he talks about the power and the blessings from the Holy Spirit that we walk in. And one of the things he said is, if you really want to succeed in life, get in the people business, because that's what God is. And so, this thing that I'm doing, I have several programs. One's called Honor Your Parents and Elders, the Hype program. One's called Through Your Child's Eyes. That was the original one. One is called Motivational Parents. I did that online on stage with Les Brown. And the new one is Identity University that I'm in pretty heavy. But I have a new one now that I just launched called Yo Dad, Can We Talk? Where I'm taking questions from random kids who don't have a solid father in their life or separated for whatever reason, and I'm answering them, and you know, from a place of wisdom, biblical wisdom, and not over spiritualizing it, but just being able to be a dad and answer the question in a way that they can understand. And I get these opportunities with young people all the time, Kevin, like my friends, you know, kids and things like that. And I am so blessed that I found my calling in life. And one is to be a father, but the other is to encourage fathers to be better fathers. And, you know, I think guys struggle with being masculine and being loving. And I can tell you right now, I at one point I worked in a foster home with teenage moms, and they were my babies with babies, right? And this is what I would say to them. I am very soft and kind with you. I play guitar for you. I sing for you. I hang out with your babies, but I'm a man. And, you know, yes, I can do that, but I'm also dangerous. I hold that back. And I've learned to harness that. I also love to do a lot of man things. I believe that men should be able to fix anything, drive anything, you know, protect their family, hunt, you know, for their food, whatever you need to do. If it ever were to go sideways in this world, which we know is coming, you need to be able to protect your family. That's a man. And also you can be a loving, kind, smiley kind of guy, like, you know, I am. And, you know, I meet men all the time in the construction world, which I've been in for years, and they don't know where I'm coming from. You know, they're like, why is this guy talking about these things that are so hard for me to talk about? But in that thing or the next, they're talking about it because now I've made it okay. We need more spaces for men like that. We're dealing with, you know, higher rates of suicide and stress, and men aren't even getting married anymore because, you know, they say, well, why would they if the women are giving it away for free? True. But also their self-esteem and their self-worth has been so knocked down that they're afraid of rejection because men get so much rejection. And we can be both. We can be kind, we can be sweet, and we can be tough.
Yeah. Well, dealing with rejection, it's like, it depends on your brought up. Like, it's like dating. You know, if you ask a girl, she says no. And then you ask another girl, she says no. And then you get to the point that your identity is like, okay, something's wrong with me. It says, you know, or something. And you develop that false identity.
And he comes directly for our identity, directly for your character. And, you know, he's not in hiding anymore.
No.
Used to be the enemy is in the shadows. The enemy is not in the shadows. The enemy is on your TV every night.
Well, he kind of knows that he has a limited time, that he doesn't have a lot of time left.
But we need to speak out even more so. If he's not in hiding, then we need to not be passive about it and speak against it. You know, it's such a very small community of people pushing for things that just aren't biblical.
Yeah, it is. And again, we could go on forever because, I mean, we have a lot in common. We have you know, talking about identity and stuff like that. Let's wrap it up with saying to somebody that's out there is a little bit about their identity, how to get their identity in the right order, what to do, kind of like not an ABC plan, but get them on the right path. So if they're listening and say, hey, my identity is not what it should be, I have a false perception, what do I do? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I would say the truth is in the Bible, for sure. And once you start to understand who you are as an heir to the throne with Jesus Christ and as a son of God, which you are, you're a child, you sit at his table. If you sat at your dinner table with your family and your mom put a big basket of biscuits down, would you ask if you could take one? No, because you know that you sit at that table and you're entitled to one. So when you're a child, as you said, you know how to be a son. When you're a child, you receive things from your parents because you are their child, not because you did anything, not because you earned it, not because you're good, not because you help people, but only because you're their child. This is the same thing with the Father. We tend to take our filters and our experiences of our earthly father and project them on Father in heaven, but they are not the same. He is the perfect Father. And if you can get past that, that's the biggest hurdle, to really receiving God as your true father is eliminating the filter of your earthly father, because no matter how great he was or wasn't, he was a man. He was not what God is as a father.
Right.
And when you realize that God loves you unconditionally, more than you could ever think of or fathom, when you really, really get that, and I mean spending time with your eyes closed, envisioning yourself, I will lay on the couch and put my head on a pillow. I am on his lap. I am laying on my dad's lap. When you can get into that place with your father, quiet, be still and know that I'm God, and trust him to love you unconditionally, then your identity is not in question. And so when somebody comes to you and says, you're this, that you're not, you immediately identify that as a lie, and you don't receive it. And you cast the thought down or the stronghold, right? To get it out of your life and to make it submit to Jesus, to Christ. You literally are the son of the highest creator on the planet, and your pops owns everything. He built everything. He created everything. He's the Alpha and the Omega, and you are the apple of his eye. And when you get that, nobody can tell you any different.
I really appreciate you, Mike. Thanks for Michael.
You too,
Thank
man.
you for being on. It was a great show. I'm looking forward to editing and redoing it. So, but everybody, thank you for joining in today to the Millennium Beat with your host, Kevin James. I've been here with Michael Feynman.
Right.
Make sure I get that right.
Yep.
You don't want to screw up your name. Names are important.
Yep.
Thank you
You
again.
can check out my website at michaeln.feynman.com.
Okay. Cool. And I'll have it in the show notes.
This has been a Millennium Beat LLC production. Views and opinions of the guest are not always the views and opinions of the Millennium Beat LLC. Check us out on social media, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and TikTok at the Millennium Beat, or on Twitter at Millennium_Beat. If you would like to partner with us to reach the world, go to our website for more information. You can go to themillenniumbeat.com or tmb2000.net. Your financial support is greatly appreciated. We couldn't do all we do without your support. The Millennium Beat just updated our website from the ground up. Check it out at themillenniumbeat.com, or you can get there by using millenniumbeat.com or tmb2000.net, where you'll be redirected to the millenniumbeat.com's homepage. I want to thank Mass Inbound for their awesome work on our website. If you're looking for somebody to build your site, I recommend them. You can reach them at massinbound.com. That is massinbound.com. These are some of the things that you can find on our website. Homepage. You can watch our latest YouTube video or listen to our audio podcast. Also listed are some of the platforms our audio podcast is on. You'll find out when the next podcast will air and who the guest will be. On the top right, you will find two red buttons, Learn How to Help and Become a Guest. Under Learn How to Help, you can become a partner, sponsor, contributor, or contribute to the future Millennium Bus. You can give one time or monthly recurring. The choice is yours. The other button is Be a Guest. Click it, go to the form, and fill it out, and we will get back to you. We would love to hear your story. Click the About Us drop-down where you'll find stats, where we are reaching people, and to find more information on our sponsors. Click on the podcast drop-down, then click on the calendar tab where it will tell you when the shows will air and who will be on them. Or if you need to know about any meetups of the Millennium Beat staff, partners, or listeners. Also, there might be on the calendar an event at which the Millennium Beat staff will be at. Click the Guest tab for all previous guests, links to their website, social media pages, and any store they might have. Click the Forms drop-down. There you'll find a release, Be a Guest, or Become a Sponsor form.